is by providing webinars like the one that Andrea will be presenting this evening. We are a family empowerment center and a parent training and information center. And under both of those titles, we are here to help parents as they support their children so that they can become the best advocates and speak for their children at individual education program meetings, at individual program plan meetings through regional center or other systems. So TASK serves 6 counties in Southern California, Los Angeles, Riverside, San Diego, Imperial, San Bernardino, and Orange counties. Our main office is located in Brea, which is in Orange County, and we have offices in Alhambra, which is in Los Angeles County, Riverside, and Spring Valley, which is in San Diego County. Okay, next slide. So TASK educates and empowers people with disabilities and their families. And parents, you are the most knowledgeable person about your child. So you're an integral part of the IEP team. That team wouldn't be there if they didn't have your child and you. You need to be a part of that team. And so our job at TASK, our family support specialists, are going to help provide you with the tools that you need and the information that you need and the support that you need so that you can learn to become the best advocate for your child at those meetings. And you can speak on behalf of your child. Because like I said before, nobody understands your child, knows your child, or loves your child like you do. And you spend the most time with them out of the day. So you have a lot to share with the rest of the team. Next slide. So TASK has 2 departments. We have a family support services or department, and we also have a technology department. And as family support specialists, we provide all of our services are free, and we provide webinars like the one that's being provided tonight. We provide telephone consultation where you can speak with a family support specialist about your concerns, and they can speak with you over the telephone. If you believe that, or if you would like, and the family support specialist agrees that you need to have your documents reviewed so that they can better assist you. If you don't understand your documents, or if you don't understand the assessment reports that the district has sent to you, or you're not sure what options you have available to you and you'd like documents reviewed so that you can understand those better, our family support specialist can do a remote conference with you either through Zoom or by telephone. So you can email us your documents so we can review them and then schedule a time to meet with you to go over the options that you have based on what we're seeing. We also do outreach into the community and TASK presentations. Our technology department provides webinars, and they also provide consultations where you can meet with a specialist and go over different technology and apps that are available to your child. So you can schedule or connect with either a technology specialist or a family support specialist by calling our toll-free number at 1-866-828-8275, or you can email us at the email address that we provided earlier. Okay, next slide.
Hi, Paula. Quick question.
Yes.
One of our participants is asking if we have an ASL interpreter.
For this evening? Well, we don't have one this evening. I wasn't aware that that one was requested. We do have access to ASL interpreters, and we can arrange for them if we know ahead of time. That one is requested. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. And then Emily, can you respond to them in chat if that's what?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we want you to know that TASK family support specialists are not advocates or attorneys. We don't provide recommendations or suggestions. What we offer are options and information so that you as family members and as parents can learn about special education, how to navigate it, and so that you have tools that you'll need at the IEP meeting to be able to speak up on behalf of your child and to be able to collaborate with the school district. So Andrea is an attorney, and so she can speak as an attorney, but task staff are not advocates and we're not attorneys. Okay, so I'd like to turn it over now to Andrea, unless there's any questions about this portion of the webinar. Okay, Andrea?
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Sure.
So this is just a quick statement about Disability Rights California. So our mission, or this is our mission statement, Disability Rights California advocates, educates, investigates, and litigates to advance the rights, dignity, equal opportunities, and choices for all people with disabilities. So like I said, we work in a lot of different areas of law, and we try to be available as advocates in kind of all of the different ways that folks with disabilities are affected. So like I said, I focus on special education and education issues, but DRC, we have a lot of other different teams that are working a lot of other different issues. And so if you did want to access some more information or more resources, we have a lot of that on our website. And you can also call our intake line about any issue affecting folks with disabilities. Okay, so right now we're going to discuss California laws passed during COVID-19. So first we'll talk about the Senate Bill 117. So what was Senate Bill 117? So SB 117 was a state law passed on March 17th, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 crisis. The law made some changes to legal protections for students with disabilities. For example, districts were not under this law, districts were not required to provide assessment plans to parents within 15 days of a request for assessment. So there were some special education timelines that this law suspended. But the law did not make any changes to legal protections for students with disabilities under the federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA. And so the IDEA is the federal law that governs the all school districts in the country regarding special education. So this means that districts were, for example, still required to hold IEP meetings, complete triennial assessments, still required to provide a FAPE, or a free and appropriate public education. So those core rights were never waived. And then as of July 1st, 2020, SB 117 is no longer in effect. So those timelines that SB 117 had paused, those timelines are back. It's no longer paused. So all of that is still applicable today. So for example, the example I had earlier here, the districts are now again required to provide assessment plans to parents within 15 days of a request for assessment. So as of right now, there are not any rights or timelines that have been waived.
Andrea,
Okay.
quick question in the chat.
Sure.
So the question reads, my son's triennial is coming up this month. My son is doing distant learning, so he hasn't been in the classroom much. How do they do the formal assessments if he's not there? Is it appropriate for them to do a review of records?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, the district does have discretion as to what types of tools they want to use and how they want to actually carry out the assessment. So that is something that some districts are doing, that they're really going to do, just a records review, gather what information they can, and that is the assessment. It's not necessarily inappropriate, but I can understand the concern that it might feel like it might be incomplete. So I would, if that is a concern you have, I would express that to the school district. Some districts are conducting in-person assessments. They'll like have sort of safety protocols set up on campus and bring students back one by one just for the assessment. So that's something some districts are doing, and that you could request as well to see if that's something your district would consider. But I guess as a answer to your question, that method of doing the assessment is not necessarily inappropriate on its face. Are there any other questions?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So next we'll talk about Senate Bill 98 and Assembly Bill 77. So these are two other laws that were either passed or amended during the pandemic that contain some provisions relating to education and special education as well. So here are some of important topics that SB 98 and AB 77 addressed. So 1, access to technology. 2, requirements for instructional minutes. 3, plans to provide IEP instruction and services. And 4, a learning continuity and attendance plan. So I will now go through each of these topics.
Sorry, Andrea, another
Sure.
question. No assessments have been done since COVID. How does the law come into play?
Yeah, so districts are still obligated to do assessments. A lot of districts did put them on hold, especially when SB 117 was in effect, because it was in effect for several months. So I know a lot of districts just kind of waited to see how the pandemic would shake out. But as of July 1st, that responsibility to do those assessments in a timely manner came back into effect. So school districts are still obligated and responsible for conducting assessments. So I don't know if. So I would share that information with them. Know that you can say that that there have been updates to the law since the summer. Yeah, but they should still be doing assessments.
Thank you.
Okay, so access to technology. So these laws say that the school districts must provide access for all pupils to connectivity and devices adequate to participate in the educational program and complete assigned work. So I think this came about because, to access school now, I think it was true even before the pandemic, but even more so now, students need devices and computers and Wi-Fi to be able to participate in school. So this is putting the responsibility on districts to make sure that students have access to those whatever devices they need in order to access their education. Okay, so these laws also talk to set requirements for instructional minutes. So these are the minimum school day lengths. So for kindergarten, the minimum of a school day has to be at least 3 hours. For grades 1 through 3, a school day has to be at least 230 minutes, which comes out to be 3.83 hours. And then grades 4 through 12, the requirement is 240 instructional minutes or 4 hours. So what is an instructional minute? SB 98 and AB 77 define an instructional minute as follows. So for in-person instruction, instructional minutes would be time scheduled under the immediate physical supervision of a school employee with valid certification. But of course, that's going to be a little different for distance learning. So for distance learning, instructional minutes are are based on the time value of assignments as determined and certified to by a school employee with valid certification. Distance learning must also include what's called daily live instruction, which I'll go into a little bit more on the next slide. But here's a tip, if you're concerned about that the program that your student in is not meeting these requirements for a minimum school day of however many instructional minutes, you could keep a log of your the time that your child spends on assignments to see if it meets these minimum requirements. Okay, so what is daily live instruction? So the California Department of Education describes daily live interaction as two-way communication between a certificated employee and student each instructional day at the actual time of occurrence. So basically, interaction that's happening in real time. So some examples of daily live interaction include synchronous online instruction and phone calls. Daily live interaction does not include one-way communication, such as voicemails, emails, or print materials. So, there are several different ways for schools to provide daily live interaction. So if it's unclear to you as to how the district is going to provide this, feel free to ask your child's IEP team how the district will provide this daily live interaction. Oh, there's the tip.
Okay, Andrea, we have a couple more questions in the
Oh,
chat.
okay.
So this first one, I believe, was a follow-up question from our last one, and it asks, so if they're obligated to conduct assessments, why is the review of records okay?
Why is the review of records okay? So I guess, they do have discretion in what tools they use. I'm not saying, it might not be that the assessment ends up being appropriate, but I think if it's, so I guess it can be a bit of a fuzzy question. So it sort of, I think, depends on, well, what information is needed to be gathered about that student, about their areas of need or disabilities. Is it something that can be gleaned from reviewing records or not? And so I guess it's hard for me to say one way or the other if it would be appropriate or not. Other than to say, some districts can have a little bit of discretion to decide what kind of tools they use in order to conduct those assessments. So I mean, again, if you have concerns about how they're doing the assessments, I would bring them up with the school district. And if they conduct the assessment and you have disagreements with it, you do have the right to request an independent educational evaluation at that time.
Okay. They say that he's in a new school with new teachers who know nothing about him, and I would think they would have to conduct assessments for a try in order to make appropriate goals.
You might be right. It's hard for me to say, I think, as to a particular student and a particular case to make a conclusion on that. So, we can absolutely discuss this more offline if you would like. You could reach out to me, and I'd be happy to provide more specific guidance from you if you would like.
All right, and then one more question. If self-harming tendencies come into play when accessing daily Zoom class and parents resort not to take part in any way via Zoom, what can the district do? Attendance issue at this point.
Sorry, do you mind repeating that one more time?
Yes.
I want to understand.
If self-harming tendencies come into play when accessing daily Zoom class and parents resort not to take part in any way via Zoom, what can the district do? Attendance issue at this point.
What can the district? So, gosh, I guess I have more questions. You know, if I wonder if the student's mental health has been assessed by the district. So if not, you could request that the district evaluate the student's mental health to see if they need counseling services or anything more intensive than that. You know, that's also a behavior that they should be looking at. So they could also conduct a behavior assessment to see what might be driving that behavior and come up with interventions to address it. So the district should absolutely be doing something about it. And so, you know, if they're not, I wonder if they're aware of what's going on. So if not, I would definitely bring it up to them, share those concerns.
I see.
And, you know, you could request an IEP meeting to discuss all of this as well.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so these SB 98 and AB, oh gosh, was it 77? Also set some new requirements for IEP teams. So the child's IEP must describe how special education instruction and IEP services will be provided during an emergency if they cannot be provided at school or in person. So these are typically called distance learning plans. And basically any IEP that's being held now, any meeting that's being held or any sort of amendment that's being done, it needs to, at that time, they have to include this plan in the IEP. So hopefully for most of you, that's already been done. And so remember, the IDEA is not waived. The district still must provide your child a free and appropriate public education. So, you know, how instruction and services are being provided during this time, it's just going to look different because we are, you know, in the midst of an emergency. And for a lot of, you know, the district cannot provide services at school and in person for everyone. But they, you know, your child is still entitled to FAPE. So whatever services your child needs during this time in order to receive a free and appropriate public education, the district still needs to provide. And just a tip, you and your IEP team should create this emergency plan together. So, you know, feel free to share stories and any data you've collected about how your child is doing with the IEP team. You know, any challenges that they're having with distance learning, and, you know, advocate for improvements. And I think this is really important because, especially now, because you're probably, you or whoever is home with the child is going to be the one who knows most about how your child is doing during distance learning. The teachers are probably only, unfortunately, able to see so much. So I think, you know, if there are challenges that are coming up, definitely share them with the district right away so that they can start working to try to address it.
And then Andrea, one participant is asking, what if it isn't appropriate for a nonverbal child over Zoom? He can't participate.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about guidance about in-person services later on, so that might be helpful. But, you know, I would just bring that to the district and say, you know, if you feel like it's not appropriate, I think just bring that to the district and see, you know, if they can provide other options.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the last thing is the learning continuity and attendance plan. So schools must submit a learning continuity and attendance plan to the State Department of Education by September 30th, 2020. So this date has already long passed. So this plan must answer the following questions. So one, how will the district provide access to a full curriculum? How will the district ensure access to devices and connectivity for all students? How will the district measure participation and assess students through live contacts and synchronous instructional minutes? How will the district measure the time value of students' work? And so, feel free to ask your district these questions if you have any concerns about any of them. The plan should have already been submitted by now, so it might be too late to provide any input, but they were supposed to engage with the community as part of the planning process. So this could be just a way to gather some more information about the district's practices during this time. And so these are a couple of other questions that the plan is supposed to address. What professional development and resources will the district provide to staff? What additional supports will the district provide to students with disabilities, English learner students, students in foster care, and students experiencing houselessness?
We have 2 more questions here in the chat.
Okay.
First one, our kids need in-person instruction. FAPE is not being met for most kids. How are the districts fulfilling this? We keep hearing FAPE, but nothing is being done.
Sorry, was the first sentence of that our children need in-person instruction?
Yes.
Okay. So, like I said earlier, school districts are allowed to provide instruction and services in a way that they otherwise would if we were not in an emergency. So I think that's, it's a reality we're all living with, and so I'm sure that you are all aware of that. But because of the fact that we are in an emergency, districts do have some flexibility. The California Department of Education and the Federal Department of Education has said that districts do have flexibility in how they provide services. But you're right. At the same time, students are still supposed to be receiving a free and appropriate public education. So there definitely is some tension there. And I'm actually going to talk about in-person services really soon. So, there are certainly some students who just, cannot access their education in a distance learning format. And so I think for those students, parents can certainly request in-person services. There are districts who are doing it. There are districts who are bringing students back to campus, and then there are others who are not. So I can't really speak to why or why not, what the district's thinking is there. Yeah, so I mean, I know it's a really difficult situation, and so I don't really have an easy answer for that. But I can in the next few slides provide some more information about what districts do have the flexibility to do when it comes to in-person services.
Okay, and then one more question. My son has severe autism and has trouble sitting during Zoom. Do you have any tips to help keep him engaged?
Oh boy. I think that's a question for an educator. I am not one. But I would bring that question to the IEP team. I mean, that's something that they should be helping you with. So I'm not sure if there's a teacher, that you're comfortable reaching out to. You could reach out to your case carrier, case manager. If there was an aide that the student was working with previously, so I would reach out to the IEP team because they should, that's a type of question that the IEP team should be trying to answer, and they should be supporting you in helping your child access his education. But I'm sorry, I don't personally, I personally don't have the knowledge or expertise to provide an answer to that.
They're saying that I asked the SLP. She just said to sit behind him.
So I would, yeah, I would probably bring that question to the IEP team. So to, the case carrier, the case manager, or the special ed teacher. I think different districts kind of handle who is the case carrier differently. That's also a request. I mean, you could just reach out to your special education director too of the district if you feel like you're not receiving enough support, and they can usually then, kind of get people moving to get you some answers. So I guess I would try to basically reach out to more people in the school district to see if there's other folks that can help you out. And at the very, you can also just request an IEP meeting, and that would also be a forum for everyone to get together, all of the service providers and staff that's working with your student. And that would be an opportunity to get everyone's heads together to figure out how to better support your child.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. I think we did this one. So next I will talk about state guidance, cohorts and in-person services. So guidance means that, they're not laws. They're just, I guess, kind of statements from agencies about how they are interpreting current laws and what they think school districts are allowed to do and obligated to do. So they're really helpful in letting school districts know what they could and should be doing, but they are not laws, so they don't have the force of law. So districts are not necessarily required to do all of these things, but it's like strong recommendations. And I find them really helpful because it's, there's basically a green light from these agencies saying, hey, districts, you can do this, this, and this. So as early as March 20th of 2020, so really right at the start of the pandemic, the California Department of Education explicitly allowed school districts to provide some in-person services even while school sites are closed. And then in August of 2020, the California Department of Public Health issued guidance about how school districts could bring back small groups or cohorts of students back onto campus. So, technically, school districts were allowed to provide some in-person services during the whole pandemic, if that is what the individual student's needs. But since August, the state has provided some more guidance about how to provide in-person services to small groups safely. So here's some information, questions and answers about these cohorts of in-person services. So what is a cohort? So cohorts are where adults provide in-person services to small groups of children indoors with social distancing. Cohorts can meet even when the school district is closed. Who can create a cohort? School districts, nonprofits, daycare providers, and more, but counties and cities can prohibit cohorts. How big can a cohort be? It can be up to 14 students. How many adults can supervise a cohort? Up to 2 adults. Which students should schools prioritize enrolling in cohorts? So, the Department of Public Health did specify that school districts should prioritize students with disabilities, multi-language learners, foster youth, and students experiencing houselessness when they consider providing in-person services. And then finally, are students allowed to receive the related services in their IEPs in person? And yes, students in cohorts can receive in-person one-to-one behavioral services, speech services, and other related services. So, there's a lot of guidance out there about school districts being able to provide in-person services. That doesn't mean every school district is doing this. But also there are school districts who are, so it is certainly possible. You know, school districts are dealing with so many different issues that they have to kind of juggle and trying to figure some of this out. So um, you know, I know it's not easy to bring students back into school, but it is happening. And so if it's not happening for your child and you really think that in-person services is something that your child needs, then, you know, you could request that of the school district. Okay, and then some helpful tips for families. So virtual IEP meetings. So IEP meetings should still be happening, but virtually, because the IDEA is still in effect. But the IDEA does allow for alternate means of participation. So it does allow for meetings to happen, you know, over video conference or phone calls. So by now, there really should be no reason that a school district is not conducting IEP meetings. So they should still be happening. Meetings can still be requested, and districts must hold the meeting within 30 days. So, you know, this is a pretty core right under the IDEA, and districts are still obligated to follow this. Procedural safeguards still apply. So you may audio record the meeting as long as you give 24 hours notice in writing to the school district. One tip is that you can request that the school district provide you with all of the documents that will be discussed at the meeting before the meeting. So for example, if there's going to be an IEP meeting to discuss an assessment, you can ask the school district to provide you with that assessment report, you know, say like 5 days before the meeting, so that you can have some time to review it, digest it, and be prepared to discuss it at the meeting. The full IEP team should still be attending, and you can always request time to review the IEP before signing it. You do not ever need to agree to the IEP at the meeting. So, you know, I think especially now, since these meetings aren't happening in person, it can be hard to know exactly what's in the document, what are the notes going to say. So you can always say at the end of the meeting that you'll need some time to review the final draft of the IEP before you can consider whether you're going to consider signing it. Okay, and then some tips about communication with school districts. So you can ask for regular check-ins with your student's case manager, and this can actually be part of the IEP. If you have any requests for the IEP team, make them in writing. So things like requests for IEP meetings, requests for assessments. It's just always important to document them. And for some of these things, it's actually required that they be in writing for the school district to consider them. I think I mentioned this earlier, but you can always contact the special education director for the school district if you don't receive a response to your requests. And share any data you have collected to support your concerns or requests. So if you're noticing, you know, challenges that your child is having, or you know, not much progress being made, you know, share all of that with the IEP team to bolster kind of your concerns or any requests that you're making. Okay, so these are just some final tips. So like I said, due to health guidelines, your child's IEP or 504 plan may not be implemented the way it was when school was in session, but a student should still receive a FAPE. Track hours of missed instruction, whether it is related services or other instruction, because, you know, if there are services that are on your child's IEP, but the district is not providing it or not fully implementing the IEP, you can go back to the district and let them know, and let them know that they should make up those missed hours. If possible, keep a journal to track regression or progress on goals. So this is related to the point I had earlier about just collecting data and then sharing that with the IEP team. So if you notice, yeah, your child is not making much progress or actually regressing, any kinds of challenges or not being able to participate, anything like that, it's just helpful to kind of keep all of that data and then present it to the school district. And then finally, not finally, just the last one on this slide, you can request an IEP meeting to discuss whether recovery services are required. So, I think we all acknowledge that distance learning is not ideal for most students. And, school districts are aware of this. And so your child might need recovery services just to kind of address the fact that distance learning is not ideal. And so you can request an IEP meeting for the IEP team to consider whether they need to provide some additional services to address that.
Okay, Andrea, we have a couple questions about the IEP. First one, how long does it take to get a draft copy of an upcoming IEP?
A draft copy of an upcoming, so the IEP meeting has not taken place yet? Well, I guess if that person can clarify whether
yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so school districts typically won't provide a draft IEP before the meeting. And so I don't know if referring to, and I'm realizing now maybe my language is a little unclear. So so I think, let me see if I can go back to it actually. I don't know if this person is referring to requesting documents that'll be discussed at the meeting to receive them before the meeting. So that typically won't really apply to the IEP document itself. So there I was referring to like an assessment report or I don't know, any other kind of report that might be discussed at the meeting. Those are things that I suggest that you request to have them before the meeting so that you're prepared to discuss it. But the IEP document itself, school districts actually, they can't kind of make any decisions beforehand about what the IEP will look like. Of course, they'll have information and maybe some thoughts in mind, but that discussion about what should be in there is supposed to occur at the meeting itself. So they, typically they won't provide any sort of draft before the meeting. But if there's any information that will be discussed that is documented somehow, like an assessment, I would definitely suggest that you request those beforehand. But at the end of the IEP meeting, then at that point, the district should be providing you with the IEP document, and then you can review it after the meeting and see if you have any concerns or if you want to consent to the IEP. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Okay, and then next question. What is the purpose of an IEP meeting if the district isn't providing any appropriate services whatsoever? For example, they only offer virtual services for physical therapy that are entirely inappropriate for a 3-year-old with developmental delays, and they have 0 observations to base the IEP on to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, the developing the IEP, I mean, it's supposed to be a collaborative process. So, hopefully, what it is a place for the parent to bring their concerns and then the district to discuss them, consider them, try to address them. But certainly there are times where there are disagreements. I think it's so hard. It's so hard because right now a lot of students are just having to receive services virtually, and there are, you know, really serious safety and health considerations that play into that. Um, so it's hard for me to say, or it might be hard for anyone to say, well, this is flat out inappropriate if it's virtual. But I also hear what you're saying, that, you know, for your child, it may be that, you know, anything virtual is just not going to be appropriate. So I think, again, I would just bring those concerns to the school district. But, you know, if you're really trying to collaborate and cooperate with them, you know, asking, you know, providing reasonable requests, and they're, um, you know, you feel like they're not hearing you or addressing your concerns, and you disagree with what they're doing, you know, you have the right to file a complaint. So you could file a complaint with the California Department of Education, or you could file a complaint for a due process hearing. Um, and you know, on Disability Rights California's website, we have a lot of resources about what those processes would look like. And then you could also call our intake line or contact me, and I could provide you some more information about that.
Okay, perfect. And then I have one more question about recovery services. How are they provided online, and is that when, I'm assuming is it when they return to school?
That is a great question, and I don't have the answer, unfortunately. I think recovery services is something that everyone is still figuring out. So to be honest, I don't know. Paula, I don't know if you happen to have any more
Yeah.
insight into this.
So I think, from my understanding, recovery services can be provided, you know, during distance learning, to help. So you could get them now if you and the rest of the IEP team, including, you know, the district members of the team, agree that your child experienced regression, let's say back in April, May, and June. And so in order to help them recover some lost skills that they experienced during that time, then those recovery services could be implemented today to help make up for past loss of skills. So I don't think you have to wait until school returns in person. But again, that would have to be an IEP team decision. And that's something that you and the rest of the team would discuss. And it's really important to have collected data to support the need for those recovery services, to support the lost skills that your child may have experienced. And we know that districts are doing their very, very best to educate our kiddos. But like Andrea said, sometimes when you're you know, when children are learning online and they need in-person education, in spite of all efforts that the school may be making, the children may regress and experience some loss of skills. So in those cases, that's where the IEP team meets to determine if recovery services are required.
Thanks,
Right,
Paula.
and they're saying, but distance learning doesn't work. He needs in-person speech, for example, because he's nonverbal. So getting services now would do no good.
Yeah, I understand. It's a hard situation. I'm sorry. I wish I had easier answers, but you know, in that situation, I think, again, you could request in-person services, you know, impress upon them that your child is just not able to access services virtually. You know, I would share all the, you know, kind of everything of what you've seen to support that. But I guess, like I said earlier, you know, I think if you do all you can to try to work with the school district, you share your concerns, you know, try to collaborate with them as much as possible. And at the end of the day, you know, if there's just if there's a disagreement there, then you do have the right to file a complaint.
Andrea, can I just add that throughout this webinar, you know, Andrea's been discussing how important it is to reach out to the school, reach out to the district, but really reach out to the teachers and through email, you know, phone, whatever, but also follow up with something in writing, just expressing what your understanding of what is going to take place, or what, you know, what was discussed during the conversation. If it's a verbal conversation, you can follow up. Your option would be to follow up with you know, your understanding of what took place during the conversation and what the outcome might be based on your conversation with that particular person. So yeah, but communication is really key.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you know, with requesting in-person services, I think definitely put that in writing. Definitely request an IEP team meeting so that everyone can come together and discuss it. And yeah, you know, like Paula said, I think communication is really important, and having as much of that in writing as possible is really helpful. And again, you know, if you're reaching out to individual members, you're not getting anywhere, I think you can run it up the chain and go to the special education director.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. All right. I think this is my last slide. So these are just the last tips I'll share. I just said this, so call an IEP meeting to discuss services and distance learning plan. So, you know, if to discuss any concerns, your child's inability or ability to access distance learning, and you know, if there's still any kind of confusion or concerns about how those services are being provided or how often, or you know, sometimes, you know, with distance learning, some students have more attention difficulties or behavioral difficulties. So an IEP meeting would be a great place to kind of discuss all of that and get all of the team members to figure out some solutions. You know, like I said, if you're comfortable, request in-person services if your child requires it to access their education. And like I said, you know, I would put that in writing, request an IEP meeting to discuss that. If your child receives a distance learning plan, make sure it states that the distance learning services are temporary and that the regular IEP or 504 plan will go back into effect once schools reopen. So meaning that the distance learning plan, you know, the plan for how these services will be provided virtually or in some manner that's different from in person and on campus, that's only applicable for when we're in an emergency. That is not the same as so that should still not still be in effect whenever we do go back to school. So you just want to make sure there's some language in the IEP to make that clear. Okay, and that is it. So these are just some links to some of the things that I discussed earlier, and I know we're sharing the PowerPoint so that you can access it instead of reading all of these letters. And then this is my contact information. So this is my email address. Feel free to contact me. If you have more specific questions or if something else pops up after this, feel free to reach out. This is the intake line for, I'm sorry, and my email address, so I'll just spell it out. It's a little long, but it's andria.seo@disabilityrightsca.org. And our intake line for Disability Rights California is 1-800-776-5746. For TTY, call 1-800-719-5798. And our intake line is open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we have really wonderful intake advocates that can answer, give you some on-the-spot advice about special education, and also, you know, a wide array of other issues as well affecting folks with disabilities. And then our website is www.disabilityrightsca.org. We have a ton of resources on here, so check it out. We also have a special education rights and responsibilities manual. It's long. There's like 15 sections to it, and it has a whole lot of information about special education. We also have a page just about special ed during the coronavirus pandemic. So we have a lot of resources online, so please check that out. And I'm happy to field any other questions.
And while you're writing,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
while you're writing those questions, and Emily will read those to Andrea, I just want to encourage all of you to please complete the survey that's provided. The link is provided in chat and also on the slide in the PowerPoint. And please, if a question doesn't apply to you, please put NA for not applicable. And I want to thank Andrea for the wonderful presentation that she just provided and helping us to understand what legislation has been passed by California related to special education and education during COVID-19. So, okay, go ahead, Emily.
First question, will we be having a presentation like this one in Spanish soon?
Go ahead, Paula.
No, I was, will we, so I'm sorry, you said, will we be having this presentation in Spanish?
Yes.
It was just offered last evening. It was just, we offered Spanish first and then English tonight. So, yeah.
Okay, and then next question, do you have ATP guidelines as well?
By ATP, is that referring to Adult Transition Program? I'm gonna make sure I understand what it's referring to before I answer.
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay, great. Yeah, we have some resources on transition services. So, if that's part of the student's IEP, they should still be receiving them during this time in some manner. I'm not sure if you have a specific question, but we do have resources on transition and transition plans as being part of IEPs on our website. And if you have a specific question, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you feel, a little shy about, typing in your questions here, or if you have specific questions, feel free to email me or call our intake line and we can help you out.
Okay, that looks like all the questions for now.
Okay, we can do like a last call for questions.
Yeah. So feel free to ask Andrea more questions if you would like. We're going to keep Zoom on for longer, so you have an opportunity to complete the survey. And if you have additional questions that you'd like to present to Andrea, please feel free. And also please, as she's invited you to do, please reach out to her if you have individual case questions. And also you're welcome to reach out to TASC as well if we can be of assistance.
Okay, we have another question here. How many live interaction minutes should students have daily?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, I'm like referring back to the earlier section I had in my presentation. So I'm not sure that there is a requirement necessarily for the amount of daily live interaction. I will admit I'm not 100% certain. So if that's something you're concerned about, I'm happy to look more into it. So you could reach out to me and I'm happy to find a more concrete answer for you. But off the top of my head, I'm not aware of a I guess set requirement for how much live interaction there should be.
Okay, if anyone has any last questions, please put them in the chat and I'll be reposting the task contact information and Andrea's contact information and the slides and our survey.
Thank you, Emily. And then Emily, we're going to keep Zoom open even after everybody's off. Okay, please keep
Yes.
Zoom open for us. Okay, thank
Yes.
you. Thanks. I forgot to mention that before. I want to thank you for joining us, joining Task and DRC this evening, Disability Rights California. We really appreciate the work that Disability Rights California does in advocating for people with disabilities. And please access their resources. They have a plethora of really great resources, and their Special Education Rights and Responsibilities book, our manual, is laid out in question and answer format. It's really parent friendly, easy to understand, and has a lot of great information.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. And it was really great to be with you all. So I hope this is helpful.
Thank you.